Good evening. Welcome to another Mothman-podcast. Tonight we're going to be talking about Mels Hole. This is a hole in the ground in Washington State on some property that's been tied into paranormal. It's kind of like the Skinwalker Branch type of ordeal. But it's a hole in the ground that I think it's about 9 foot by 9 foot hole that residents there on the property has been using it to dump trash for years, but it never fills up and it appears to have no bottom. So researchers have gone in and put cameras in. This is a news story that talks about this, and I thought it was very interesting, and I wanted to share it with my listeners. So I hope you enjoyed tonight's podcast.
Camera in Mels Hole, and what they captured shocked the whole world. On Mel Waters' property in the Manistash Ridge west of Ellensburg, Washington, there's a peculiar hole in the ground that resembles a well, but it is not a well. It served as a trash dump for Mel and previous property owners, where everything from garbage to broken appliances and old tires found its way into the depths. Strangely, the hole never seemed to fill up, leading Mel to question its mysteries. Oddities starting to emerge. His dogs avoided it, his radio picked up bizarre signals, and there was no apparent bottom. You may have come across numerous stories and theories circulated about Mels Hole. In 2017, a team of researchers finally located the infamous hole. Yet, when they lowered a camera down, what they discovered caught them completely off guard. Their only option was to flee, realizing that their lives were at stake. Join us as we uncover the mystery of Mels Hole and share the story of curious researchers who dared to find it and attempt to document the secrets hidden in its mysterious depths. Mels Hole is a circular pit measuring 9 feet 9 inches in diameter. It is surrounded by a stone retaining wall that descends about 15 feet before plunging into darkness. What's intriguing is that not only did Mel Waters and his wife deposit items into this mysterious void, but his neighbors also joined in and contributed to this peculiar pit for years before Mel arrived. In fact, Mel's neighbors claim they couldn't recall a time when the hole didn't exist. Now, what baffles everyone is the absence of sound when objects are dropped into the hole. No echoes, no indication of a bottom. Mel Waters became curious and determined. He set out to uncover the mystery to determine the true depth of this mysterious pit. He was an enthusiastic fisherman who had numerous spools of fishing line. Attaching a 1-pound weight to the line, he lowered it down a hole. To his surprise, it descended 4,500 feet, the full length of the reel, without hitting the bottom. Undeterred, Mel reeled it up, replacing the weight with a roll of lifesavers, and sent it down again, hoping to discover water at the depths. However, the lifesavers resurfaced dry. Unyielding, Mel continued his quest, connecting spool after spool of fishing line, reaching depths of almost 10,000 feet with no sign of a bottom. Despite deploying lines totaling 80,000 feet, equivalent to over 15 miles, Mel's pursuit proved fruitless, as the mysterious hole withheld its secrets. During his experiments, Mel observed a peculiar phenomenon. His dogs steadfastly avoided the mysterious hole. Even when forced, the dogs resisted, digging in their feet as if sensing an unsettling force. Strikingly, the area surrounding the hole lacked any sign of wildlife or insects, despite birds casually flying around it. Intrigued by this, Mel inquired with neighbors about their dog's behavior near the hole, and they all shared the same behavior. As discussions unfolded, one neighbor shared a chilling story. He revealed that, not long ago, his dog had passed away. In an attempt to bid farewell, he disposed of the canine's body down the mysterious hole. To his astonishment, a few days later, he spotted the same dog running through a wooded area near the property. Identifying it by the familiar collar, he called out, but the dog inexplicably refused to respond. The dog acted as if he was in the dark about his owner's identity. Could it be a version from another dimension? Well, that's a theory. With bizarre stories accumulating and the fishing line going deeper, Mel found himself perplexed, way out of his depth. Mel needed assistance to uncover this mystery. In 1997, there was one place to turn to discuss the strange and be taken seriously. Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell. Broadcasting from the high desert of the great American Southwest, Art's show reached hundreds of stations worldwide with 10 million listeners. If anyone could shed light on Mel's situation, it was Art Bell and his audience. On February 21st, 1997, Mel sent a message to Art. A call followed, and Mel's hole became a worldwide sensation. Throughout several shows, Mel Waters gradually unveiled more details about the mysterious hole. The positive aspect was that Mel received valuable advice from folks worldwide, suggesting the use of a laser for measurement or radar to assess the distance. The downside? Now millions were in the know about this hole thanks to Mel's radio revelations. Clues dropped by Mel hinted at its location. The day after the initial broadcast, as Mel returned to his property, he found the entrance blocked. The U.S. military, yes, the government, had caught wind of the hole, and they wanted exclusive access. After the Friday night show, Mel noticed some helicopter activity around the property, and it continued the next day. Mel mentioned that the hole might affect the environment around it. Animals avoided it, but plants thrived. Radios acted strangely. Bring one near the hole and the signal went staticky, picking up broadcasts from elsewhere. One day, Mel's radio started playing what he described as old-time music. Trying to change the channel, he ends up tuning into a baseball game. First baseman, he thinks, until he realizes the game was played in 1967, 30 years ago. In Art's initial conversation with Mel, the call stretches for about an hour before wrapping up. Mel was staying in Ellensburg and he made the call from there. However, upon Mel's return to his property, he encounters a roadblock manned by armed military personnel and signs of heavy machinery being brought in. The reason given is a plane crash on the property, yet there's no report, no fire, no smoke. Despite this, Mel is denied access until a complete investigation of the supposed crash is conducted. When he requests to speak with the person in charge, a civilian-clad man informs him that the land might not be his anymore. Implicit threats of discovering a drug lab on the property if he doesn't comply. In defiance, Mel talks about going to the press. The man in charge dismisses his threats, saying, "Go ahead and talk. No one would believe it." However, Art Bell and his audience would indeed believe it. A few days later, Art calls Mel for an update. Mel reports that a neighbor witnessed a dark beam emerging from the hole, piercing through the clouds, a darkness unlike anything seen before. Now I must say, Mel didn't witness this himself, but according to Art Bell and a bunch of callers, this part of Washington is a hot spot for UFO sightings, disappearances, and other paranormal happenings. The callers, they had their own takes on it. Some speculated the hole might be on the ley line, creating a portal to another dimension or maybe even through time. They believed anything tossed in there just vanished, possibly accumulating in a mysterious pile in an alternate reality. You know, a heap of garbage, old appliances, and, unfortunate animals. And there was this one caller who floated the idea that it might be a tunnel to the hollow earth. Yep, like a subway. The theories kept pouring in. Art Bell, unable to access his property anymore, reached out to locals for more intel. An elderly neighbor spilled the beans, mentioning that years ago there used to be stone columns around the hole. The audience was quick to remind Mel that calling into the show might be a mistake, as you know the government could be listening. The show concludes and Mel promises to return with an update. But on the day Mel was supposed to show up again, he's a no-show and doesn't pick up the phone. Now, the television crew went up to Ellensburg to dig into this. Guess what? No hole found. However, in the area they discovered loads of military blueprints and intel that strongly hinted the military had been or still was in the vicinity. Now would be 3 years before Mel claims he was offered a cool $3 million annually to lease his property, but with a catch. Sign a non-disclosure agreement, pack up, leave the country immediately, and never return. Mel takes the offer and sets up shop in Australia for 2 years. But the heart wants what it wants, and Mel starts missing his family. So he decides to sneak back into the States for a visit. Now, he was warned against this, but Mel does it anyway. During this visit, Mel reaches out to Art Bell and agrees to spill the beans on the radio. But surprisingly, he never shows up. Mel explains that on the day he was supposed to be on air, he was on a bus heading to visit his nephew. But some kind of altercation breaks out, police are called, everyone gets questioned, and they shuffle onto a different bus. Then, as if life needed another curveball, Mel blacks out. The next memory Mel has is waking up in San Francisco, realizing a whopping 12 days have vanished. Here's where it gets eerie. He's in an alley, wallet and keys gone. His arm is throbbing, and upon inspection, he discovers needle holes and tape marks from an IV. As he regains consciousness, he tastes blood in his mouth and finds his back teeth missing. Now brace yourself, Mel never makes it back to the property. Legal troubles swoop in as he faces action for illegal construction, power lines, septic tanks, and paved roads. Mind you, he didn't put those there. The government occupied his property for 2 years. Despite that, Mel loses everything. Adding salt to the wound, a day or two after reaching out to Art's show, his bank account is empty. Now, plenty of folks call in, claiming it's all a hoax. But Art Bell, the master of tales, decides to let Mel spin his yarn. He does drop a nugget that a TV crew explored the area in search of the elusive hole. No luck on finding it, but they stumble upon signs of significant military activity. Adding a dash of intrigue, the no-fly zone inexplicably expands to cover the same territory. TerraServer, the pre-Google Earth mapping site, shows the whole area blacked out, a detail that checks out. Now, some callers suggest Mel might have found the blacked out map area and pretended it was his property. But TerraServer launched 6 months after Mel's first call, so he couldn't have known. Now here's a twist. A Native American tribe contacts Mel, inviting him to Nevada to assist in their research on another bottomless hole. They guide him there, and despite not going all the way up, there are discussions involving Native Americans, the Basque, and the pit. The consensus is that everything is as it should be, with assurances that Mel isn't from CNN, FBI, or CIA. The usual suspects. So off Mel goes, and he gets a first-hand look at the hole. Now, the burning question, what on earth is down there? The second hole isn't on the Indian reservation. It's on public land used by the Basques, an ethnic group hailing from the region between France and Spain. The Basque, settling in the US, particularly Nevada, since the mid-1800s, used this land for sheep herding. According to them, the hole has been there for at least 200 years, considered sacred. Measuring just over 9 feet wide like Mel's, this hole takes a different aesthetic approach. While Mel's hole had a stone retaining wall, the second hole boasts a metal collar and lining that stretches as far as the eye can see. Here's where it gets peculiar. This hole radiates warmth, with heat palpable all around it. The metal collar is not your average metal, it's special. When Mel accidentally drops a tool on it, the impact is eerily silent. No sound, no vibrations, just a baffling absence of the expected. So Mel and the Basque begin their experiments. Their first test involved lowering a bucket of ice down the hole about 1,000 feet deep while keeping some ice at the surface as a control. When the surface ice melted, they retrieved the bucket. To their amazement, the ice in the bucket didn't melt at all. Even more perplexing, it was no longer cold to the touch and it remained dry. The texture resembled large pieces of salt. Intrigued, they attempted to melt it over an open flame, but instead of melting, it caught fire, and not just a fleeting flame. This ice continued to burn for months. Subsequent experiments involved sending different amounts of ice down the hole. Interestingly, about 2/3 of the time, it melted normally, but 1/3 of the time, it underwent a mysterious transformation. At this point, one courageous Basque volunteered to descend into the hole. a notion met with unanimous agreement that it wasn't a good idea. Opting for an alternative, they decided to send a sheep down. Yes, a sheep. The outcome? Brace yourself. The sheep, seemingly aware of impending strangeness, resisted vehemently. As the crate containing the sheep was lowered to a depth of 1,000 feet, it abruptly stopped moving. The peculiar humming sensation enveloped the surroundings. They left the sheep down there for 30 minutes and then hoisted it back up. To their surprise, the crate and sheep appeared unchanged, yet upon closer inspection, the sheep was lifeless. The experience left them in awe, evoking a sense of the extraordinary, even bordering on the religious. The Basque, skilled in the art of butchering sheep, wasted no time conducting a swift autopsy on the enigmatic sheep brought to the table. Brace yourself for what unfolds. As they examined the sheep, an unnerving revelation surfaced. It appeared as though the sheep had been cooked from the inside out. The most striking observation was a colossal tumor dominating the sheep's body cavity. But here's where it takes a surreal turn. The tumor exhibited signs of life and began to move. Yes, you heard that right. To unravel the mystery, they decided to cut open the tumor. What they discovered inside left them utterly flabbergasted. Inside the tumor resided what Mel described as a fetal seal. Picture this, a creature reminiscent of a baby seal, tethered to the tumor by an umbilical cord, yet with eyes that resemble those of a human. They observed this seal-like creature crawl to the end of the table, and Mel sensed a yearning for the hole. Acting on intuition, he gently placed the creature near the edge. The creature, slimy to the touch, emitted a distinct smell of ozone. The men and the creature engaged in an unusual mutual observation for about 2 hours. Then, in a moment of finality, the seal creature cast a parting glance at the men and leaped into the mysterious hole. Now prior to Mel's journey to Nevada, he faced a grim prognosis: advanced esophageal cancer, leaving him with a mere 6 months to live. Yet, post this otherworldly encounter, Mel found himself miraculously cancer-free. His conviction? The magical seal held the key to his inexplicable recovery. Mel underwent a transformative experience that altered the very fabric of his being. As the radio show neared its end, a stern warning echoed across the airwaves. The actual roadway into Mel's hole was ominously present, but listeners were urged to steer clear, as venturing beyond that point might lead to ominous consequences, a potential disappearance into the unknown. Several months later, Mel returned to Coast, bringing with him the aftermath of the peculiar ice experiments. One of the Basque individuals took the burning ice to his cabin for warmth. Little did he anticipate the bizarre consequences that awaited. The burning ice, continuously ablaze for months, leached moisture from the air, leaving the cabin in a perpetual state of dryness. The inhabitant experienced persistently parched skin and an unquenchable thirst. Even boiling water turned peculiar, as the steam was inexplicably drawn into the stove. Then, the unforeseen occurred. The stove crashed through the cabin floor, descending into the ground beneath, all while remaining warm. The pragmatic response? Patch up the floor and utilize the peculiar hole for warmth. However, this makeshift solution took a surreal turn weeks later when the entire cabin collapsed into dust. In the aftermath, the bewildered owner sought refuge with his brother. Returning to the cabin a month later, the perplexed cabin owner encountered a peculiar sight. The stove, once at the surface, now rested 5 feet underground. Astonishingly, the stove had unwittingly birthed a new baby bottomless hole, its creation marked by a flawlessly smooth surface. Attempts to retrieve the stove proved futile until the intervention of a massive crane, which successfully extricated the perplexing appliance from the depths below. Adding another layer to the enigma, the Basque individuals revealed encounters with the entity, the magic seal discovered in the hole. Viewed as a benevolent presence, the magic seal assumed a spiritual significance for the Basque, fostering a profound connection with the inexplicable forces at play. Strikingly colored birds, seemingly impervious to bullets, now circled the hole. a peculiar response to what only could be described as a spiritual experience. The Bosque, in their unique way, perceived the avian presence as a response to their encounter. In an astonishing revelation, the Bosque claimed that the magic seal communicated with them through a system of beeps and clicks over the radio, a language they purportedly understood. According to their belief, the creature conveyed warnings about the perilous nature of the ice, emphasizing its potential for catastrophic consequences if it fell into the wrong hands. Art, ever the Inquisitor, sought evidence of this communication, and the Bosque did not disappoint. They had recorded everything. For the next few hours, a few more theories are considered. Art manages to convince Mel to return to the show, promising to bring recordings, photos, videos, and every piece of evidence he can gather. Mel agrees to head back to Nevada for this mission. The call concludes and the show wraps up. Strangely, Mel goes silent. He doesn't answer Art's calls, and eventually the line is cut. 5 years pass, marking the conclusion of the Mels Hole story, leaving behind a plethora of unanswered questions. Among Art Bell's memorable moments, Mels Hole stands near the top. So how much of the tale can we confirm? Let's start with the hole's location. While Terra's server blacked out that part of Washington, Google Earth revealed it again. However, if the military truly took over the property, they would have likely concealed the hole. Despite years of searching, many locations emerged, but one on Google Maps stood out. Someone took the initiative to visit the location and document what was there. Now, during one of Mel's phone calls, he mentioned 2 old buildings on the property, and one eventually collapsed under snow. This lines up with the description pretty neatly. On the property, there's also something intriguing. A hole about 9 feet wide with a stone retaining wall, just as Mel described. This discovery stirred up quite the buzz online. However, the excitement faded as the hole turned out to be an old well with a definitive bottom. Many on the internet claim to have found Mel's hole, but the truth is it remains elusive, at least for now. Now let's talk about Mel, a character as complex as the mystery itself. Records don't show a Mel or Melvin Waters living in the area. Still, some speculate he used a pseudonym to safeguard his identity. Now here's a real blow to the story's credibility: the lack of pictures. In every call, Art presses Mel for photographs, but sometimes Mel claims he forgets to take them, which seems absurd. Another time, he argues that cameras don't function near the hole due to interference, or he does have pictures and recordings, but they're not readily available. He promises to send them when he can. In Mel's defense, he never monetizes anything. Even if this were a hoax, he could have made a fortune selling t-shirts, books, fake photographs, anything. People would have bought it just for the cool factor. Now, a common argument is that Mel's story became increasingly bizarre and eventually he couldn't keep up with it, leading him to abandon the hoax. However, he remained consistent with the facts over 5 years, and Art Bell, attempting numerous times to trip him up, couldn't succeed. Yet the hole itself poses a geological improbability. A hole many miles deep would be unstable, collapsing unless it's a bottomless gateway to another dimension, right? Unless it's that. But the truth remains elusive, and whether Mel's hole has believers, Art Bell might not have been one of them. Still, Art, being an entertainer, knew this was the kind of story his listeners loved, a legend that people still discuss 30 years later. In 2017, enthusiasts of the paranormal and those captivated by the legendary story of Mel's hole joined forces, armed with technologies like GoPro cameras, lights, and strings, eager to catch a glimpse into this mythical abyss. An unexpected turn led them to coordinates found in a Reddit post, guiding them to a random farm potentially linked to Mel's hole. Arriving at the site, they confronted the profound depth of the chasm, defying easy comprehension. Unable to fathom the bottom, they resorted to throwing rocks, adding an element of uncertainty to the mystique of this legendary hole. With binoculars, the team spotted a mysterious figure observing them from a distance. Yet, before a thorough review of their camera footage, an urgent sense pushed them to leave hastily. The discovery of a beetle down the vast hole marked a symbolic moment, emphasizing the profound depth of the unknown that endlessly captivates the human spirit. Beyond unraveling Mel's hole's mystery, The expedition delved into metaphorical layers, reflecting on the human fascination with the unknown, echoing themes of exploration, curiosity, and the timeless pursuit of mystery. What's your take on this? Let us know in the comments.
Please let me know in the comments. Email me at mothman-podcast.com or mothman-podcast@gmail.com, and let me know your thoughts on this. I hope you like tonight's episode. This is the Mothman. Good evening.